A pleasure to meet all at last. And now we are at it once again with the Vlog-A-Thon 6.0. More importantly, we are going to be here to be addressing a couple of things that some people have been asking about lately. In fact, the questions I've been getting that are not in fact why is that related are actually pretty impressive. In fact, some of them are so good, it's hard to come up with any legitimate answers. But there are, in fact, two of them that I would like to focus on for the moment, and I'm sure that a few others, I could get around to answering them when I have a legitimate answer made in due time. Until then, though, a few other questions include the likes of this next one that I have in mind, which is, of course, why am I creating train wreck documentaries when there's already professionals out there doing so? So, in this instance, it's actually a pretty simple question, but in fact is a bit difficult to explain. Because first of all, when it comes to professionals, there's only a good handful that I've known about over the years. There's Thunderbolt 1000 Siren, there's Ryan's Colorado Rail, there's Mango the One, otherwise known as MTOX, and while there's a good handful of other people out there that have made their own sort of railroad documentaries, whether it be the history of a certain railroad or a disaster in particular that they wanted to talk about, old, new, or in between, there's a good amount of YouTubers that have been riding the wave of Thunderbolt 1000's success. And while many of the others I've spoke of had since come around with their own successful lineup of train wreck documentaries, having my own is an entirely different story. Because first off, I didn't quite have the motivation to pull it off, nor have I really had the budgets to make it work. Since after all, I was mostly organizing budgeting for a lot of other investments. A new bed, a new phone, a new vehicle, amongst many other things. But the truth is that I had gotten myself a new phone after switching my carrier to Verizon. I had gotten a new car after my last one broke down, and as for the bed, well, it's still mostly something that's in progress, but I guess we'll see if I can cross that bridge later on, because it's not like I need it immediately, but it's still good to have an upgrade around when necessary. But to really explain why I felt the need to create my own line of train wreck documentaries is because, first of all, it's been about a year since I started the whole thing to begin with. And the one that I chose to start with, of all things considered, is Norcross, Georgia. And I will say that with the first 3 or so train wreck documentaries, they weren't exactly the best that I could have put together, as many of them were full of photos, some of which I had to pay licenses for, some of which I had to give some credibility to them in the form of proper citations or credible sources. And in all seriousness, it's a good understanding of what the challenge is that lies ahead of each of the creators that I've mentioned before, but whether they were aforementioned or ones that have yet to still exist, the truth is that why I wanted to create my own line of train wreck documentaries is simply because, well, I feel like that's where the hard part is. Riding in the success of someone is one thing, but to go far out from the success of one's creations, that's pretty much what I intended to do. I never did intend on creating competition between other creators. And I feel like that's probably the best answer that I could come up with in this instance. Having no competition with others is essentially what I consider to be maybe the only proper way to put together these kind of documentaries. At the same time, though, while I have made train wreck documentaries, I've also done documentaries of such things that are historically relatable. Not just railroad disasters, but also the history of railroad lines, railroad companies, and I've even gotten a few historical figures associated with the railroad, such as Kate Shelley, and even the so-called saboteur who caused the infamous Great Heck disaster of 2001. But even all of that information, it just comes back to me. I was able to make documentaries like this possible because, after all, not too many people out there were willing to try it out. And I will say, some disasters I managed to touch on, including Mosier, Oregon, Great Heck, 2001 in the United Kingdom, as well as a couple of foreign disasters, which I mostly have in the works as of now, but I really do get the feeling that some people out there might not want me to go into that direction, because creating documentaries with credible sources in mind and accurate information, of course it can be a bit challenging at times. And even then, I'm sure that some flubs can be identified with some of my own videos, but those are, in fact, quite simple to correct, as I am able to not only edit the videos from within, but I'm also able to have them cut or dubbed in a way that can actually correct any sort of misleading or mystifying info. So, don't ask how I can do that stuff. But you know what? I feel like I've made a good answer here to the question at hand of why I went ahead and created some of my own train wreck documentaries when there was plenty of other people already doing so. Well, with that in mind, that's all I got to offer for this piece of the Vlog-A-Thon. But I'll be back next time with at least one more question worth answering for this exact occasion. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.